Alrighty, guys, I'm Morthadon, and we are back for My Hero Academia Season 4, Episode 8. Also, Episode 71 of the entire show, which is crazy. It's a lot of episodes. Uh, but yeah, guys, we have a pretty crazy thing going on, but real fast, I want to mention that my voice is still kind of in and out. I still have a lingering cough and little throat issues from being sick, but I'm mostly better. It's mostly just that. So if I'm clearing my throat, coughing a little bit, that's why. Just wanted to give you guys a little heads up before I start here. But that being said, let's just talk about what happened last episode and then get started, shall we? So last episode we had the very tense episode of them planning and building up to this fight. We had the heroes coming together with all their information that they had. They ended up finding the hideout of where Eri is being kept. Although Overhaul found out that they've been sniffing around as well and kind of like knew about their attack, so both sides are kind of informed. And but they did catch him earlier than like he thought this was gonna happen, but it's earlier than he expected. So I guess that's sort of a good thing, but he's still on the move. He's still probably moving Eri. He has other things in the works, and we have these, what are they called? They're like they were like the 8-something of the Shie Hisaikai. Shoot, I can't remember. What were they? Damn, I can't remember what they were, but they were the 8-something. It's 8 dudes that are gonna be fighting our heroes while Overhaul probably runs with Eri, is my guess. But and right at the end of the episode, we had them actually start the fight, which they were at the front door, and the villains actually rushed out to them. So, things are going crazy. Guessing this is going to be an action-packed episode, which I'm really excited for. So, I think we should just get on into it, shall we? Alrighty, so like usual, guys, down in the description there's going to be a Vimeo link. You guys can click that. It'll bring you directly to the reaction, and then you guys can come back here to the YouTube video for the discussion portion. Alrighty, guys, so go ahead and click that link in the description right now. Alrighty, guys, so that is the end of episode 8. Man, that was a crazy episode. It felt like... Now, maybe I'm just crazy, but it felt like there was so much talking for what was supposed to be like an action kind of scene, right? It felt very fast paced, even, which is cool because it kind of portrayed the hecticness of these kind of situations to me in a way that shows don't usually do. Like, usually the characters are like, running around, everything's crazy, everything's going wild, but I never really feel like I'm in that position with them. But the way they did this episode with how they were like rapid firing their lines off and talking very quickly, and like something happens and they talk about it real fast, something else happens, they talk about it real fast. Even like the fighting, it didn't, there were a few times where they stopped to talk, but there was also a lot of times where they did their talking while they were fighting, and they didn't like linger on it. Like some action shows and even some fights in MHA, they stop and they talk about it for a while. Like, I guess for instance, we had the times where like back in season 1 when All Might was about to fight Nomu, and Shigaraki was talking about his many quirks and stuff like that, and talking about how he has like shock absorption and that's not gonna work. They kind of stopped the fight and panned to him, and they kind of like, he calmly was just like, that's not gonna work, didn't I tell you? He has shock absorption, and then they go into like the shock nullification, and he starts punching the crap out of him, but like, I felt like there wasn't that much of a pause when they did that kind of stuff. Like, they mentioned the guy with like the ghost mask that came up that I didn't catch the name of, that did the eating thing, and they explained what he does while he's sitting there eating. So I'm trying to read the text and I'm trying to watch the show, and watch like what he's doing and everything, and it felt like so crazy. It felt like I like, maybe dubbed would have been a little better for this episode, just because I would be able to watch the fight that's going on, because that's what I always say when it comes to anime in the subbed versus dubbed argument. I always say to myself, like, it's usually like one of the arguments I hear people say about dubbed being better is they say they're unable to watch what's happening in the episode because of the subtitles they have to read. But I'm like, well, usually the important bits they're not talking. That's just, like the important fight scenes that you really need to watch what's happening. There's not really talking. But this one, I felt like the talking was nonstop. It was almost a little too much. It felt like chaotic with me watching it, but that, like I said earlier, that might have been the vibe they were going for. They wanted to make the audience feel like chaotic and crazy too. I'm honestly, I'm really interested if it's just me, and maybe I'm just like, a little off this episode trying to read the subtitles and stuff and everything. But I'm curious to watch some other reactions now of this episode and see if there's anybody else that felt like it was like a lot happening, or if it was just me. But man, it was crazy though. So I guess to get into more of like the nitty gritty of what happened this episode, it was mainly focused on Tamaki, which was really cool. I really wanted them to. I mentioned it during the opening. I meant to mention it before the episode started, but I really wanted them to slow down a bit because the pace has been so fast, It was like, bump into Overhaul, meet Eri, talk about going after them and coming up with a plan, and then, extra episode with Kirishima, and then, an episode of finding them and everything, and then, like, the attack begins. And, like, I'm glad it went fast for those parts, but I didn't want them to breeze by this, too, and be like, okay, the invasion happens, they run in, Ares gone, they go back and they sulk about it for the second half of the episode, I wanted them to slow down for these fights, show off some of these new characters they've introduced fighting, and also get some of the classic, like, badass fights with, Kirishima and Midoriya and stuff like that, and some of our characters we followed closer, get some good fights with them too. And it seems like that's exactly what they did, which really makes me happy that they slowed it down. They brought in Tamaki with some backstory, with some really cool quirk usage, and seeing him fight a lot. But I will say they might have stressed with the flashbacks a little too much on his, like, on the fact that he's very, anxious and self-conscious, and kind of like looks down on himself, because I felt like in the first flashback or two, we kind of got that covered, and then they just kind of pushed it more. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely loved the episode, but I almost felt like there was no point to some of these flashbacks because it was just reiterating the exact thing that he has already said, I really appreciated the scenes with Mirio, though. The flashbacks with him. I like the flashback when they were a kid, and, he's very shy and couldn't really, like, talk to people, and he tried to mention something about being a hero, and Mirio noticed that and confronted him and was like, I like heroes too, and stuff like that. That was really cool. But don't get me wrong, I can heavily relate with the anxiety thing. It was just like, I felt like in that excuse me, in that scene with him as a kid, they talked about how he was, shy and anxiety, but he wanted to be the best. And then, like, another flashback, they talked about, he's a little older and he's, trying to use his quirk, and they're like, oh, are you nervous again? And then they show another flashback of him talking about how he's nervous, and it felt like it really drilled the topic in, but I still absolutely loved it. I just wonder if it was a little too much. I wonder if they could have slowed down the fighting a little bit, like showed more of it and kind of drew it out a little more so it didn't feel so rushed. And showed a little bit less of the backstory stuff in return. But that's just me really nitpicking. I absolutely love the episode and the way it was formatted, but that was just something I thought about. But yeah, so his character is really one that you know nervous, anxiety, stuff like that really affects him. And then when he sees someone like Mirio who may feel the same way as him, even Mirio mentioned it that, he's not that mentally strong, but he's able to cover it all up a lot more than Tamaki can, and he shows his outward goofy appearance when, internally he could really be struggling and everything, but, you know, Tamaki sees his outward appearance that he's able to fake, whereas Tamaki can't do that. He's just unable to fake it like he is, but he wants to. Um, it's just like a really cool connection that those two have. And it seemed to have worked out this episode. But I mentioned it during the reaction. There was a point with some of the other reactors I watched. Actually, two different reactors noticed it, and I don't know why I didn't, but they said that with a lot of the focus on Mirio and everything that's going on here in these, past few episodes, there's, possible death flags being thrown in his direction. And I didn't really think about it, but, now that they say that, I do kind of see it, and it definitely is there, and that does worry me. And seeing this episode, like there's that cliche of when a character gets a backstory, they tend to die. And it worked out for Tamaki, but I worry that this backstory was also tying in some backstory with Mirio, even though it wasn't from his point of view. It still could be said that this could be like, another death flag kind of thing for Mirio, which I definitely don't want Mirio to die or anything like that. I don't want his quirk to be like super destroyed by Ares, bullets or anything like that, but I don't know. It's scary, but yeah. The enemies had interesting quirks. He's able to, the one guy, Larceny, he's able to pull anything the other person is wearing to him, which is interesting. Um, excuse me. Crap. Um, but he also had that blade under his mask. Now, does he always just keep a blade like in that mask, and he can just bite down on the grip and start like using it like he did? Or did he somehow steal that and like put it in his mouth, I don't know. Because it went through his mask. I don't know if the stuff he steals with his quirk teleports. Because it would have had to teleport through the mask, I think. And he talked about keeping it hidden, so I think he might just keep a knife in there, which is kind of crazy to think about that he keeps a knife in there. But yeah, he was even able to take like the stuff that he manifested on his body from his quirk. He was able to take too, which is crazy because you'd think like it's almost like Tamaki like transforming his body in a way, so you'd think it wouldn't work. That Larceny's quirk wouldn't work on that, but I guess it does. So like if he had his claw, his foot claw thing, would it just suck out the power of the foot claw thing and then his foot would return? Or how would that work? Because he does kind of transform his foot into that bird claw, that we kind of saw that a bit. I'm kind of curious how that works, but it's interesting. the way the villains use their powers in sync with each other was really cool, because that's not something we see a lot of, you know? We don't see a lot of clever usage of quirks in, in any show with, like, these power system kind of stuff, the combination attacks. It's not often that we see the enemies doing a very good job of working together. Usually they're more on the selfish side, and they don't tend to lean that way. So seeing that this episode is really cool. How Larceny would steal the face shell that he made off of him, and then the crystal guy would go in for a punch, and that was really cool. Tamaki did a really good job of putting up a shield to block that too, and stuff like that, just in time. But I wonder if he knew he could to move on to Tamaki and his quirk combining. I wonder if he knew he could combine his quirks like that, or did he come up with this on the spot? Because that is really cool. He took the octopus bits and then put the shell over it, and he used the shell to make a face mask too, which was really cool. And that opens up a whole new way to use his power now. If this is new, this is just what he came up with on the spot. Imagine if he starts thinking this way and thinking by combining properties, what else can he do? And he comes up with these plans and strategies that he can use in the future. He could come up with some really crazy stuff now with that combination, so that'll be really interesting to see in the future, providing he lives through all this. Granted, I don't think they'll kill him next episode after showing him defeat these guys, now, but I will say the defeating them was a little quick for me. It seemed like he was oh, I just need to stop them from working together. So he kicked a rock in Larceny's face, because Larceny needs to look at you to steal stuff. He needs to look at the item, probably, and stuff like that. And then just, grabbed the crystal guy and blocked the eating guy, and then just threw him into him, and then they were all defeated, it seemed a little quick, that after all, the beating, after all the beating and stuff that Tamaki took, shoved into the wall, bleeding and everything, just tossing these guys into a wall was enough to stop them. But, it's kind of, I don't know. It did feel a little easy, but, sometimes that happens with me in shows, I think it could just be me, I find that a lot in Fairy Tail too, where I feel like they hype up the other people's powers, and then the main characters just defeat them in one big attack, and I never feel satisfied, so that just might be my kind of thing, where I don't know. I would have preferred to see him tie him up somehow, suppress them more, and then be on the floor writhing or something, or do more to knock him out, or I don't know. I know heroes can't kill or anything, but I don't know. It's just a feeling I had when I saw that. I was really, they're done? That was my thought after. It wasn't oh, that was such a big, powerful hit, I can understand when Midoriya did his, full throttle punch into Muscular's face and punched him into a wall, that he'd be knocked out at that point. But this just didn't really convince me as much that these three dudes would be knocked out by, just being thrown into a wall. But I don't know. Especially the crystal guy, since he's his body is covered in armored crystal, but yeah. Anyways, I'm sure we're gonna have him next time we see him, he'll probably have them tied up and stuff, so it'll probably be fine. But yeah. Yeah, all we really got was Tamaki throughout this whole episode, really. We had, tiny bit of Midoriya, really, with Tamaki asking, them to, keep an eye on Mirio because he's charging ahead and he's not going to be able to handle all this by himself and all that, so it's definitely something to worry about in the way Midoriya really looked at him was pretty cool. I always love when Midoriya's like, he like stares at him very intently, gives him this look of like intensity, and it's just like, it makes me think that Midoriya is just like really taking in what they're saying and understanding it, and I always like that about Midoriya and stuff like that. So yeah. Um. I guess I was so focused on Tamaki's fight that we didn't really talk too much about the mimic who is able to go into an object and control it, but usually he can't do anything bigger than a refrigerator. Um which is interesting. But with the quirk juiced up drug that he took, he was able to control like the entire underground, which was just crazy how he was like twisting and spinning that area and everything. Like that'd be so hard to keep your footing and keep moving and everything. And he's able to rearrange the rooms and drop them down into a trap with two of the other bullets and everything, and that was just crazy. Um I'm wondering like I was trying to think of what else he could use his quirk on that would be ridiculous. Like, could he take control of like something as small as a gun, or does it have to be bigger than his like normal body too? Like, I wonder what his other restraints are other than, obviously when he's not taking the drug, you know, something as big as a refrigerator he can do. But could he go into a gun and just start like shooting people? I don't know. But that's pretty crazy. Also, something I wanted to talk about a little bit too was the ending, like towards the end, where the villains were talking about their dedication to Overhaul, and maybe when I rewatch this while I'm editing, I'll get some different outlook on this, but Tamaki for some reason said it's more like they're brainwashed, but I didn't really catch that. To me, it seemed more like they were just accepted by Overhaul in a way that normal society never did, and that's why they are devoted to him, which to me doesn't sound like brainwashing. It just sounds like Overhaul can sometimes be good to his men. Although, now that I say that, maybe it is a little bit of brainwashing, since Overhaul just straight up kills his men that don't, like, perform well, like the guy that let Eri escape, he just splattered, and he used another one as a body shield to sacrifice in front of him. So maybe there is something to what Tamaki said about, how Overhaul is just using these guys. Maybe Overhaul pretends to really accept these people in order to get them to follow him, but he doesn't actually care about them. So maybe it's something like that. But I'm interested to reread some of these lines that were said on the rewatch while editing, because it was just, like I said at the beginning of this discussion, it was just going so quickly. There was so many lines, there was so much going on that, it was so like fast paced. But yeah, I think that's gonna sum up my discussion. I'm sure there were some aspects of this episode that I missed and I could talk about more, but as you guys could tell throughout this episode, like coughing and clearing my throat, I've been struggling with my throat stuff, and talking this much does hurt a bit. Like, I can feel my throat like stinging right now, so I kind of want to end it here. But yeah, guys, awesome episode. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it too. Hopefully you enjoyed the reaction, and if you did, you can help me out by hitting that subscribe button. I very much appreciate it if you do. And also go ahead and check out the description where you can find links to my Patreon, where you can find full length if you want to watch the full version of this episode, because there's a lot going on in it. I'm going to have to cut out some some parts that I did like to be able to fit everything. So, but yeah, if you guys want to check out that full length stuff, you can check out my Patreon for that. It also supports me in what I do here, and I very much appreciate it. Other than that, guys, until next time, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys later. Bye bye.